On Thursday this week, in what is viewed as a do-or-die consequential contest, the ruling Jubilee party will be seeking to avert another loss to the United Democratic Alliance that has made a seemingly irritating but impactful forays to the central region. Tonight on Pundits Night, we talk Kiambaa and the 2022 game plan. Good evening, I'm Abubakar Abdullahi. Welcome to the broadcast. As always, your voice matters, so does your opinion counts. Talk to us. Send us a message on 22047. The hashtag to use is Pundits Night. Let me introduce our pundits for the night. Isaac Mwaura, politician, Professor Peter Kagwanja, and Reuben Kigame, a presidential aspirant, the latter is. Good evening, gentlemen, and thank you all for making time for us tonight on TV 47.
Good evening.
All right. Professor Peter, let me start with you. Observably and looking at Kiambaa, it seems as though it is a do-or-die situation for the ruling Jubilee party. Do you view it so as well?
Yes, it is a do-or-die. Kiambaa by-election is coming against the backdrop a loss in Georgia, very, very close to Katundu South, which is the home place of the leader Jubilee. It is reflecting a kind of what march is an assault, the basis of the presidency turf by the Tanga schools. And therefore, that is really not comfortable for the ruling party's leadership. Obviously, UD is a splinter of Jubilee, but it is determined to go its way. So it's really a do or die.
Professor, you say it is a do or die, but Professor, let me ask you this. You say it is a do or die, but is it so because it could have been avoided, Prof? Traditionally, one will assume this is the president's political backyard and he is a president in power. It shouldn't be a do or die.
No, it is a background, but remember the president himself is not campaigning. I am sure if he was campaigning, he was on the ground, they would have took the back. So it's a very uneven struggle because the deputy president campaigned against the president in absentia.
Professor, as you say the president is not campaigning, one would argue his party is.
Yeah, I do agree his party is, but remember the president is in his rim duck phase.
All right.
And therefore, the leadership, although he has 1 year to go, his political leadership is already looking at an alternative leadership. And the choices are beginning to become stuck between the deputy president, William Ruto, and opposition leader, Raila Odinga. And given the background of the vicious battle in 2017, what we call the double election, I think the pains are still there in Mount Kenya region, and that choice is not comfortable. We are looking forward to the emergence of an alternative leadership to challenge that particular duality between Raila and Ruto. If it does, then we are not going to see the kind of Kiambaa happening. But for now, Mount Kenya region, including Kiambaa, is basically a Wild West.
All right, and we will come to that, Prof, which you have extensively written, I believe, in your opinion piece yesterday for one of the leading publications. We will come to that. Let me bring in Isaac Mwaura to the discussion. More than the colors of Jubilee and UDA, it primarily is seeming as though it is a fist fight between the two to grab this hotly contested seat.
We talked for a very long time in Jubilee to ensure that we were united. I started talking about this way back in 2018, about the fact that the two vicious, camps of Tanga Kieleweke, by the way, I'm the one who coined the name Kieleweke, that they were actually going to be detrimental to Jubilee. And I even said that if Jubilee continues, it will just be a song, a color, and a logo. And that's exactly what has happened now. You see, the people who are fighting, this is actually the stronghold of Jubilee in 2017. But what we are seeing currently is a situation where now there is a side ally to the president and there's a side ally to the deputy president. And the side ally to the president and the NASA, can you imagine, and the NASA, brigade. So it's a do or die, and you can see from previous by-elections, Abubakar, the Rurie ward was won by UDA, the London ward was won by UDA, PEP associated with Mose Kuria, in the Hasla Nation won Gaturi. Jubilee only won in Kahawendani, where I come from, and I played a critical role, by the way. Raphael Tuju can tell you. I played a critical role in ensuring that my friend there got the seat, the current MP, the current MCA, Kevin Odhiambo. So now when we are disjointed and we are not able to do work together, then our competitors can only gain, and that is why you are seeing a situation where people are thinking like Mount Kenya region is now highly divided. Abubakar. So it's a do or die for the party, because it's like somebody saying you used to be the owner of this place, is now being taken over by a younger sibling, for example. And UDA is a former PDR which is in coalition with Jubilee. But we've also seen a situation where Jubilee coalition partners like KANU have competed with it. We've also seen, even in the spirit of the handshake, like in the Bonchari by-election, ODM was competing with Jubilee, and so was UDA. So it's a realignment of politics towards 2022, and I don't think there is any reverse gear. It has happened, and I think things will just move on that direction.
And given that we are having this discussion on what presumably is the eve of the election, the by-election rather, come Thursday, will it be fair to say that there is some overconfidence from the UDA side of ruling out the Jubilee party as an already dead party?
I think nobody can go to the polls thinking that they are going to lose. Everybody has to go, saying that, exuding confidence, because you have to inspire confidence in the membership and even the followership. Because if you went there thinking that you're going to lose, then why should we in the contest in the first place anyway? What we expect that whichever way that there will be peace and there will be tranquility, there will be no voter bribery. The intimidation that we saw in Georgia, where the police came and there were you would actually have thought that there was war in Georgia. We don't want to see voters intimidated. Let people go in there, vote peacefully. We know there are some people who are planning to cause fracas, but we believe that the will of the people shall prevail in Kiambaa.
And because we are a show of record senator, former nominated senator, now a politician, when you say of people who are intending to go fracas, you mean the individuals who are intending to do so? We
have gotten this information. And please, for your information, the matter of my being senator is still in court.
That's why I'm refraining from using the title. So you cannot say former or current or whatever. Just let it be determined by the courts. It's only fair because there is an injunction. What I'm trying to say in short, my brother Abubakar, is that we have had, that information. It is in our possession. And have you shared with the relevant authorities? The
relevant authorities are the ones who are even coming to distract meetings. You saw what happened yesterday when there was supposed to be a tournament. The state-sponsored violence is actually the real reason, and that means some people somewhere could have sensed defeat.
Despite both sides saying they have double booked that venue for the tournament, just for the purpose of record. Again,
I don't think that was stage managed, my brother, and it's on record.
At least that's what the authorities say. Nonetheless, let me bring in Reuben Kigame to the discussion, presidential aspirants. We will come to the presidential aspirant part of it a little bit later into this discussion, Reuben. But observing Kiambaa, it surely must matter to the president at least.
Yes, I take a totally different approach, and I say that to talk about do or die implies that Jubilee is still alive. No, Jubilee died with a handshake. And so we have been observing jitters of possible. Unfortunately, it is irredeemable. The way Jubilee has treated people who have tried to bring sanity into their party, including my friend Isaac Mwaura, who continued to point out certain things that were going wrong, and they were all ignored. So you realize that the party died long ago, and those who would have made it, alive were pretty much kicked out. And so we are not talking about a do or die. Jubilee is dead. In fact, with the second term of President Uhuru Kenyatta, you no longer have that synergy between him and his deputy. And so what has happened is in all the by-elections, it was a house divided against itself. And so it's really perhaps a do or die if you are factoring in a leaving party. But with the opposition being part of Jubilee, you really can't talk about do or die. And so I'm here basically saying the real test will come in August 2022.
All right, you say Jubilee is a dead party. This is a party whose leadership is talking of rebranding the party, a party that is at the heart of forging a merger with ODM. Sure, it's not dead from that end, is it?
It is dead because as soon as it rebrands, it's a totally new party. It's like a reincarnation. So Jubilee, as we know it, that was born to lead the country to the win of Uhuru and Ruto, the Uhuruto Factor 2013, is no more. And right now, there is, when you hear a party talk about the need to regroup, the need to reform alliances and so on, you're not talking about the same party. And so it's a house divided, and it's pretty much the way, religious groups go with the splinter groups forming independent units. And so that regrouping with ODM is no longer the same party. And I don't think it will bear the same name anyway.
All right, Prof, given that the Jubilee Party lost the entry constituency of Juja, which is the entry constituency to the president's political backyard of the larger central Kenya, and Kiambaa now being a do or die, as we have alluded to partly into this discussion, will it, at the end of the outcome of Thursday from this by-election, cement? What kind of a message will that outcome send?
Well, let me start by saying that I think the idea that Jubilee is dead is a hyperbole. It is, we cannot take it metaphorically. Otherwise, the party, to all intents and purposes, is alive and kicking. It is the party that has the president. Otherwise, if you say it is dead, then we don't have the presidency. Because the president, in parliament, it's a majority party. That's why we have the leader of majority and so on. So there is what is expected to happen and what is happening. And in reality, objectively speaking, Jubilee is strong. Jubilee is a party that is governing, and Jubilee has everything that is needed for a party. I guess what my brother Kigame is trying to say is that his future looks bleak. And the reason why it looks bleak is nothing to do with the Kiambaa. It has everything to do with the fact that Jubilee was not presidential candidate because Deputy President William Ruto was edged out of the party. His followers were edged out of the party and they moved to UDA. Now, the unity between Jubilee and ODM is going to be fatal for Jubilee because it means it's not now. I don't think there is a merger yet. I think there is talk about a grand coalition, which is expected. But the big issue is who is the leader of Jubilee after President Uhuru? And in answering that question, then you are asking about the succession question in Jubilee. And that is the question that has not been answered. The die is cast. Deputy President William Ruto not a factor in Jubilee. And that's why you see the competition between UDA and Jubilee. That's why you saw the competition between People's Empowerment Party in Juja and Jubilee. These are Jubilee rebels. These are Jubilee as splinter parties. But in reality, Jubilee is strong. If you look at the amount of money that has been given to Jubilee by the by the government as part of party support system, it's huge. 500 million is not
Professor, let me interject you at that point. Whereas you defend Prof and say that Jubilee is strong, I believe it's also you, in your opinion piece yesterday, wrote, and I quote, that however, without a strong candidate from the region, Jubilee risks sliding to the margins.
Yes, I meant that. And that is the issue, the point I'm trying to develop. That if Jubilee does not have a candidate to succeed President Kenyatta, Kigame's prediction will be right. It will be dead in water. But for now, saying Jubilee is dead is basically wishing it dead, because it is not. Because President Kenyatta has 1 year to go. And we had a similar situation in 2012 when President Kibaki was going out and PNU was basically a dying party, which was being succeeded by TNA. Had President Uhuru Kenyatta taken PNU, PNU would not have died. Whether he would have won the election on PNU ticket is another matter. But the main point here is that political parties reflect the strength of their leadership, and they also reflect their leadership. Jubilee currently has no successor to President Kenyatta, and therefore it is in limbo.
All right, Professor Isaac, if then it is Jubilee versus UDA, and blatantly painting a president versus his deputy, will it not be fair to say it is dalliance with disobedience, as some have said, daring and taking the president head on in his own political backyard?
No, I think there are people who have even said that Deputy President William Ruto should be thrown out of Jubilee Party. He should even be de-whipped. I mean, Murathe and Tuju have done all of that. So it's not a question of it happening yesterday. Didn't you witness Abubakar at some point when the Deputy President went to Jubilee House and he was actually declared persona non grata, that he wanted to grab power? A Deputy President wanted to, going about the business of the Jubilee Party. Aren't you finding it an oxymoron that those of us who support the Deputy President are being told that we are the ones who are wrong? Well, Murathe and Tuju are supporting Raila, they are right, another party leader of a different political party. How can it happen that the people who are right are the ones who are being painted to be wrong, and the people who are wrong are the ones who are painted to be doing the right kind of thing? I think it is conceivable to imagine, and it's indeed plausible to say that there are people who wanted Jubilee dead, because it was actually a political juggernaut. It was a genius of political masterstroke, that you could cobble up a union of 12 political parties, replete with very serious, party organs that never ever met really. And the only active ones were the national disciplinary committees that were, disciplining the likes of Isaac Mwaura. So we said, Wembe ni ule ule, we are Wembe ni umetukata. So basically, it is just the political dishonesty. It's trying to relieve off your political debts by way of demolishing the house that both of you are living in. I mean, that's the truth, and we must say it as it is, so that then nobody can ask you questions.
You will also agree.
So that nobody can ask questions, and so that you are not able to be seen to be culpable.
Fair enough. But you will also agree that at least it seems as though it is a president and his deputy at loggerheads.
No, I'm talking about the whole history of the dishonesty within the political party. When you have a vice chairman of a political party saying that they will not support the deputy president, I mean, honestly, what do you expect? It was a matter of time. I think for some of us, we raised these concerns as early enough, as I had said, but nobody listened to. And my good brother Reuben Kigame put it very clearly. By the way, Reuben and I are the most famous alumni of Thika High School for the Blind. So issues of people with disabilities. How comes, for example, when I raised this issue of Abubakar, I, as the only person with disability, a person with albinism, is the one who has been singled out? It is systemic discrimination of the highest order. And Reuben, even when he started to campaign for the presidency, his launch, he had to be tear-gassed, because there are some people who do not think that we're equal than others. Abubakar, remember, when I was facing my tribulations, the people who attacked me on the basis of skin color were sent by their own, they were just dogs barking at the base of their masters, Junet Mohammed and David Murathe. So let us not mince words here.
Isaac Mwaura.
Let us not mince words.
All right, let's not mince words. Fair enough. Yeah. But let's equally point to fingers where they should be pointed. You're pointing to one side and accusing one side of being dishonest. The other side is pointing at the man who I want to suppose you have approved of his candidature come 2022 at the presidency level as being a man who started the race before time.
There is no question of starting the race before time, my brother, because tulisema ya Uhuru 10 ya Ruto 10. We had an agreement. So
but that Kumi did not end, did it?
No.
It's ending next year, if anything.
If you want to marry a girl tomorrow, you start preparing for the dowry today. You don't marry them on the wedding day that out of nowhere. It is a very much a practice of this country that since 2002 we have been in an election mode. Actually, to what point do you say people are campaigning? Because when you use government projects, to get political support, that's campaigning. So you cannot accuse one individual. We know many people have declared their presidential candidature. Abubakar, people like Musalia, people like Kalonzo, people like Wetangula, they survive at the high table. Why? Because of their presidential ambitions. And they keep on saying very clearly, even Justin Muturi has declared that he will be on the ballot. So do not criminalize somebody for starting to till their land early simply because they were more proactive. I don't think that's fair.
Is it a question of proactiveness or over-ambition, as some say?
If you have no ambition, you have no business being in politics.
It's one thing to have an ambition, it's another to have an over-ambition.
If you have no ambition, you have no business being in politics. It's very simple, and you cannot criminalize ambition.
All right, Reuben.
Abubakar, let me just hitchhike on something here. First of all, Jubilee seems to have two factions. One is, ODM, then you have UDA, because for it to be completely devoid of, like a double faction activity, the deputy president would have to resign. He's still part of Jubilee and yet leading or being part of UDA. And so I insist that this is a house divided against itself. And that division, that splinter aspect is what completely robs it of Jubilee as was. Because I guess a party is put together not just by an agenda and manifesto, but, solidarity in matters of decision-making and succession notwithstanding. So if Jubilee cannot decide for now who is going to bear that torch in 2022, then as a party, it's incapacitated. It is unable to move as one party. In other words, the Jubilee that we knew in 2013 is not the Jubilee that is now. And as long as that is status quo, the issue of decision-making, for example, that partnership with ODM, in and of itself, where, Raila goes up to open up or invite guests and launch projects and so on, when you have a deputy president, already you are showing that the house is divided. And so it may exist by name, but really Kiambaa is going to be an interesting test because Jubilee UDA, if Jubilee UDA wins, then in principle, it is said the deputy wins, and yet the deputy has not quit. So I don't see too much unity with regard to succession when it comes to 2022, because there would have to be a total redefinition of Jubilee. And like I insist, I don't think it will bear that name Jubilee.
And we will talk of that 2022 after this short break, of which you, Reuben, among others, will declare, and some have already declared, their ambition to succeed President Uhuru Kenyatta as the country's 5th president. Time for us to take another short break here on Pundits Night. Stay with us. We will be back with this discussion after this break.
You are watching TV 47, the home of untold stories.
Raukia siku njema na tunukiwa offers kila siku. Pata offers zote mahali pamoja ili uongeze zaidi, utume SMS zaidi na ubrowse zaidi.
Wewe usijali. Tuma namba ya kila supplier kwa hiyo soko. Enda Jubilee nitaongea na kila mmoja wao.
Very good. Piga *444 hash utunukiwe Credo double.
Raukia siku njema na tunukiwa offers kila siku.
Usiyakubalie maumivu ya misuli kukatiza ratiba yako.
Kaluma Pain Balm ni dawa ya kusugua iliyotengenezwa kutoka kwa miche maalum ili kutuliza maumivu ya misuli. Kaluma Pain Balm. Shhh. Maumivu yakizidi, pata ushauri wa daktari.
Bro, unafanya hustle gani hapa mtaani?
Mimi ni taxi driver hapa.
Oh, kwanza kabisa ulijuaje kuhusu loto?
Ile kitu tuma nicheze loto, ni kuona ile zawadi watu wanapewa. Na mimi nikajiamini, wacha nicheze hata mimi siku.
Wewe crocodile ile zatokea Jubilee. Hiyo sijakula hata unataka nikufe kabla ni. I don't like it. I don't. Miss Kai na hipo ikitokelezea ivuruche simu yangu. No, ni sawa. Those who know me will tell you I'm not a lover of large volumes of water. But for you, we roam the different parts of the country and beyond just to make sure that we bring you the experience. We educate you, we entertain you, and we inform you.
That it's not political and it can do something.
As we sail the boat of Morning Cafe to enlighten you, entertain you, and inform you.
The home of untold stories.
Welcome back to Pundits Night. You are watching your channel of choice, the county's television, TV 47. Let's get back to our discussion and let me bring in Professor Peter as we wrap up on the Kiambaa contest. Prof, despite the confidence that has been at least publicly shown by those who are vying for this seat come the by-election on Thursday, Prof, what will it mean if Jubilee Party wins? A party that some have ruled out the prospects of it being a live party even as of now.
Now, Jubilee victory is almost inevitable because Juja was a wake-up call, the political elite in Jubilee. It was a very embarrassing moment to have lost, not to UDA, but to what Kuria's PEP, People's Empowerment Party. Now, that loss was very painful, I must say, for Jubilee leadership, and therefore they cannot repeat it. And I've heard this again and again. You have to do everything within your power to win the seat, and I think Jubilee is doing everything, following every rule in the book to ensure they win, and I'm sure they're going to win the seat. But the point is that why it is such a hard struggle is because the party is on transition. I say this on transition. First, you must remember that the presidency of Uhuru Kenyatta is on its grim dark face. 1 year to the next year's election, and already we have entered the election time, which is 1 year before the election. So the governing time is over. And Jubilee is no longer governing. It has to recapture power. But it has no leadership that is prepared for the recapturing of power. And its members, parliamentarians, are not sure whether they are going to win their seats or not. So they are trying their best. So the problem is not that UDA is such a strong party that it is giving Jubilee a run for its money. It's because the deputy president, who has been a Jubilee member himself, is such that he is the leading person in Jubilee, and therefore he has a lot of following of members of parliament. But don't forget, in the Mount Kenya region, 90% of sitting members of parliament don't go back. So you might see Jubilee rejuvenated, coming back alive with new members. But then to do that, it will require to have a new leadership that replaces President Uhuru Kenyatta as the leader as he retires, and at the same time challenge Deputy President William Ruto, who is already outside the party and pursuing his own ambitions. And as such, I think we need to look beyond Kiambaa and look at the crisis of Jubilee as not a crisis of Kiambaa. Kiambaa is simply a reflection of a party that is in transition. But where the old is dying and the new has refused to be born. That's what they call the politics of interregnum. The old is dying, but the new has refused to be born. So it's trapped in that politics of interregnum.
All right.
And the new has to be born, Abubakar. The new has to be born.
All right, Prof, we have talked of the Kiambaa contest. Let's now talk of the 2022 game plan. Isaac Mwaura, talking of Kiambaa, talking of Juja, talking of Rurie. One thing that is strikingly out is that of the Deputy President either publicly endorsing, campaigning for a candidate who is from another party, be it the UDA or the People's Empowerment Party of Moses Kuria. And the premise of this is that they are part of a hustler nation. In less than 30 seconds, Isaac Mwaura, what is the hustler nation all about?
The hustler nation is about, ensuring that the people at the bottom of the pyramid are able to rise up to attain their full potential. And it is not about retributive justice against those who already have resources. Those ones, they can keep their resources, but it doesn't matter that it should matter to them that even the ones, who are below them can also rise to become like them. It's about equal opportunity. It's not about, a class war like our competitors are trying to make. And so therefore, it's really putting the economic question, Abubakar, on the ballot. It has never happened before. Away from the tribal barons who actually accumulate wealth primitively when they have cashed in their political capital, when they have formed government. We want to have the Commonwealth issues matter at the table in terms of value chains for milk, for maize, for...
But Isaac Mwaura, the common man has, from the first election the country held, elected members to represent him or her.
Yeah,
they have had representation, be it at the Senate, be it at the National Assembly, be it at the governorship position, to the extent of the presidency. It's not new that the common man is getting a voice.
No. The voice about, you see, the problem with our politics is that it becomes what you call elite capture. So that you have what you call iron law of oligarchy, that no matter how democratic a system is, there are very few people who make decisions at the top. But then do they have the interest of the common man? What is actually on the table? What are the issues we converse about? So when you change the issue, you see, Kwame Nkrumah said, seek ye the political kingdom, and everything shall be added unto you. So we have been chasing politics for a very long time. It is now time we seek the economic kingdom. Let us have arguments and counter arguments about the economy. We in the hustler nation are providing this bottom-up approach, bottom-up, middle-out approach in terms of how to reorganize 15 million businesses that are daily hustles actually, 16 million people who live below the poverty line. And we are a $100 billion economy with $90 billionaires and $10 billion shared by the other 50 million. We have $8,300 billionaires and millionaires. We have huge inequalities in this country. For you to be in the top 1% of the Republic of Kenya, you need to have a net worth of 2.2 million. Now, why is it that there is this inequality? And I think for me, it's a question of the way the political economy is structured and also state capture, where you then do big business, huge infrastructural projects that end up removing money from the people, they're becoming slaves of debt, yet these monies are eaten by some select few who take this free money and reinvest in all the productive sectors of the economy, therefore dominating both the politics and the economy.
Reuben, I'll give you a chance to respond to Isaac in a minute. But Isaac, before I let Reuben make his contribution. You're talking of inequality, basically the gap between the rich and the rest, which charity firm Oxfam actually agrees with you that 1% of Kenya's wealthiest own as much wealth as the bottom 99%.
That's true.
But it's not a new realization, is it? No, this has been there. It's a campaign tool that politicians are now using it.
Thank you, Abubakar. It's a question of whether you now put it at the front of the discussion, and also whether you have something, you have a plan to work on it. So what we have done in the Hustler Nation, we've actually analyzed the various economic issues from across the various regions of the country. And I think you saw us doing various forums. We started with the Mount Kenya region. I was very instrumental in coming up with a blueprint. And so we want to see what are the basic minimums that we need to do. Look at issues to do with health, issues to do with land reuse and reconciliation, issues to do with value chains, availing of housing, as a tool for mobilizing markets. You see, we have a clear
and this
plan.
change is supposed to happen through the elected leaders of these regions, is it?
No, what we need to do is to have a government of people who are thinking common. You know, the role of a political party is that you now have a collegiate thinking where people are institutionalized a kind of way that they would want to run government. Unfortunately, Abubakar, every time we have new political parties, then that is lost. If Jubilee was to survive another election, and maybe there is a recalibration of the ideology towards the Hustler Nation, for example, then you would have, you know, a similar group of people. But what Professor Kagwanja said that you have high attrition, 90% of people not being elected, on average 76% members of parliament not going back. That is actually the biggest challenge, because then you don't have a follow-through. And party leaders don't like seasoned, you know, legislators because they know what to do. But having said that, we need to have a counter argument against our hustler nation. But the big business trickle-down economics have certainly not worked for this country. They have produced a very small clique of people who are extremely rich, who cash in on the tribalism to continue dominating our politics.
Let me understand this for purposes of fairness, Isaac. Let me understand this. This is an economic change that is in the form of a proposal that your party seeks to implement if it gets to power. Is it so?
Yes, it's true, because we are moving away from what I call poverty-producing politics.
All right. And these are elected leaders who will be expected to implement this blueprint.
It is a collegiate thing in terms of the way the government is formed.
But the champions are the elected leaders.
The champion is whoever is elected. What is the ideology?
Fair enough. You have answered my question. If elected leaders are to champion and implement a blueprint, a policy document, a document that is streamlining what should be done, isn't that not what you politicians have done in the name of presenting a manifesto to us, being elected to office, and at the end of the day failing to implement their own manifesto?
Exactly, and that's the point. You know, let me ask you. The issue is, first, have we had a conversation of manifestos the way we are having it detailed way before elections? I don't think it has ever happened. I can tell you, I participated in the making of the 2007 ODM manifesto. That was my first time. I had just graduated from university. I participated in coupling up with the regional issues of various sectoral groups. This is the first time you're having a serious, concise engagement more than 1 year before elections, where regions are sitting down and saying, these are our priorities. And then they are going to be refined into something that is tangible. What happens with the Kenya Vision 2030? Let me give you, as an example. We have a 30-year plan that is plugged in every 5 years in terms of the manifesto of the government that is coming into power. Now, sometimes you find like there are pegs being, fitted into holes. And it doesn't work very well. What we want to do is to recalibrate the whole, system of government so that it's more responsive to this economic agenda. That has never happened before.
All right, let me give Reuben a chance to weigh in his thought as well. Reuben?
Yes, I think, Abubakar, this hustler narrative is probably one of the worst lies that ever emerged in the history of Kenyan discourse. And there are several reasons. One, let me just begin by using symbolism here. If the engine of a train is the one that is faulty, you don't blame the coaches. You don't say by elevating or improving on the coaches, you're going to have a better engine. And so the problem with the hustler narrative is that it uses the common man in order to get votes without solving a problem. The bottom is not the problem at all. The people at the grassroots are not our problem. Kenyans are hardworking. The boda guy goes about his business. Unfortunately, somebody at the top increases the price of the motorbike and increases the price of fuel, and then increases the price of bread, So this is not a bottom issue. And so it is the top that is so sick. In fact, the top is so sick that it need not be repaired. It needs to be replaced altogether. So I think that particular group is using the so-called hustler in a very manipulative way, so much so that they think they are going to be mindful of the common man. Now, the second thing is all that this bottom-up approach proponents are saying is something they could have done already. you know. And if I was to use the deputy president as an example, you know, he's in office. He has been in office for nearly 9 years. Some of these proposals should have come up. And at the same time, I would be saying that if you were to look at, you know, the seesaw, the ping pong narrative here, where the common man is baited in the narrative to look as if, you know, he's the one who is going to be making all the decisions, when that representation is already mandated through the legislature. I just don't know who is deceiving who. Really, our problem is values. Our problem is values. Our values are rotten. And so the 10 millionaires are making bad decisions, putting us into debt, making us poor, and then saying, put me in power and I'll fix your poverty. I think that's one of the worst kinds of hypocrisy. Right now, what we need to do is replace the entire top so that the top can, you know, be able to run this country with meritocracy, governing how we appoint people into office, give a national, you know, outlook on leadership, but more so make decisions that improve the lives of people without gambling with them every 5 years with vain promises. I can't take it.
Reuben, let me ask you this, and it's in tandem with the question of the hustler narrative and the hustler nation. In a YouTube video posted on the 13th of February 2021 titled "The Hustler Narrative Divides Kenyans," you appear in that video and you say, and I quote, "I want to tell you, my friend, Deputy President William Ruto, that even the road to hell is painted with a lot of good intentions. I want to remind you, sir, the same people you are polarizing, you will need them." You think he's polarizing?
It is not him polarizing, it's the narrative. It's the narrative, because how a narrative is perceived ends up dictating how it outworks, especially on the grassroots. Let me give you an example of a friend of mine who was visiting South Nyanza, and some border guys were saying, "Wacha hustler nation tuchukue power. Hawa watu haya manyumba watatuona." You know, so in principle, on the ground, the border guys thinks that the taxi driver, albeit the taxi is hired, or, you know, he's driving somebody's car, he views this guy as dynasty. And, you know, anyone who is doing well is viewed in that light. It's the perceptions. But on the other hand, the reason why I made that very open statement is this, that there are people who have made genuine wealth in this country. You know, they've worked hard, either in the middle class, or they've really invested and so are doing well. The average boda and mamamboga reference gives the impression that if you've worked hard and you have some property, then you are an exploiter. So that particular perception is not good. And there is a different way of stating concern for those who are on the lower cadre of the economic development ladder. But you can't use, you know, once you elevate the hustler concept, then you are putting it as a blueprint for defining who you are going to concentrate on with regard to economy. But these are the same people who are working so hard and they work for.
All right, Reuben, let me interject you at that point. I'll ask Isaac a little bit later whether this is polarizing or not. But let me get to Prof. Prof, if then the hustler narrative, the hustler nation, was a way of seeking to harvest political souls, is it doing so at the ground level?
Let me say that the hustler narrative is a product of an evil genius who is playing what we call economic populism. Very, very similar to what was happening in the United States under Donald Trump, who promised to make America great, to restore Detroit and do all the miracles. He left office with an America that was worse than how he found it. Because he had polarized the country that it was at the verge of civil war by the time he left office. If you ask him, he'll tell you that he was doing a good job to empower the downtrodden and the weak. Let's be clear. It is not the first time Kenyans have realized that we have poverty. At independence in 1963, what did the founding fathers of this republic recognize? From across the board, Kano and Kando, they said, we have three enemies that time. Poverty was number one. Ignorance was number two. And disease was number three. And is that very different from the Big Four agenda? It's not. Manufacturing, food security basically is poverty alleviation, put simply. The other one is health, universal health care and so on. But what the Hasra narrative is doing is that it wanted to penetrate Mount Kenya region, where there are multiple cleavages of the post-Mau Mau divisions between the so-called the sons of chiefs and the sons of fighters, or the daughters of chiefs and daughters of fighters. And in that regard, it is already preparing a very fertile ground to penetrate by using what we call wedge politics. You drive a wedge in existing cleavages, and in so doing, it is therefore equating wealth or associating wealth with vice and poverty with virtue. And that inversion, the criminalization of wealth and valorization of poverty, is what is the bane of the Hasra narrative. Whatever it is meant to achieve, whether it is a vote, it's an evil narrative. And we must not mince words by saying that. It's evil, it is criminal, and it is counter-nationalism.
Prof, you haven't partly answered my question, Prof. Let me rephrase it again. If it was intended to win political souls, is it doing so?
No, it is not. It is not doing so. It is fooling the poor. In other words, it is sowing seeds of discord between the employer and the employee. If the voter votes the person and loses the job because they have destroyed the shop where they work, who gains? This country committed itself to private property. It committed itself to the spirit of Harambee. We have the social network to kind of mediate excesses of capitalism. And that is basically Harambee. How many of us don't not educate our own siblings, our own relatives, our own neighbors? How many weekends do we spend without contributing for medical funds and so on? That is the spirit of Harambee that is in Kenya. You don't find that in America.
All right,
you don't
Prof.
find that.
Point made, Prof. Point made, Prof. Let me interject you at that point. Isaac, Reuben talks of a polarizing ideology. Prof talks of polarizing equally, but a product of an evil genius.
I think, first and foremost, I must really agree that this conversation is very emotive. And that means there is something that we are addressing in the Hustler Nation that has never been addressed before. I am extremely excited to see that. And the fact that at the independence we were talking about poverty, ignorance, and disease, this was a borrowing from the UK. I think we forgot to add idleness and squalor. You would talk about jobs and housing. These things have not been addressed before. And let's not also, let us not try to over-amplify. Our politics are polemic in nature. There's always a dichotomy, Professor. And for a long time, the dichotomy that has been us versus them has been the tribe. Now, what has happened, though, is that then this has been devolved further to actually a very small clique of people who want to pass on the presidency from one person to the other because they have really skimmed off through this tribal privilege to accumulate primitively for the sake of themselves and those who and their surrogates. And that's why you have the issue of dynasties, because then they have an entitlement. The second generation and third generation of these people feel like they're the only ones who can lead this country. That has to come to an end because we want to have equal opportunity for everybody, that every child who is born today can rise to become a president. And that is actually the second point. This idea of saying that, okay, those who have tuk-tuks will be fought by those who have bicycles, that's not true. That's a counter-argument. It is actually the poisoning of the hustler narrative. The hustler narrative is about, or ideology, is about, if you started out with a bicycle, you can actually one day own an aeroplane. It's about equalization opportunities within the marketplace.
But is there a
so
problem?
Is
there a problem being born in a household that has an aeroplane for that
No,
logic?
there's no problem. There's no problem at all. The only problem would appear is that if you think you were born in an aeroplane, others should not own aeroplanes. You get my point? Because that is a sense of entitlement that is causing other people to feel like they own this kind of. In fact, I think I am very saddened to hear Professor Kagwanja, my good friend, and I really respect him, saying that he's criminalizing thinking. I don't think anybody has monopoly over thinking. We have to imagine a new Kenya. If it has not worked before, can we be peddlers of hope? So that we are able to show that it can be done. We may not have a clear pathway because we are trying it, but it can be done because every country that has ever developed, it was as a result of leaders who are in government who reached a place and said things cannot continue the same way. It was not because of newbies who were neophytes, who didn't know how to govern, who came and changed and transformed. No, it's those people who were like born again, like Saul of Tarsus who became Paul. Those are the ones who said, now if we continue this way, we are breeding a lot of poverty. And I also want to disabuse the notion, Abu Bakar, that the hustler narrative is the same as Trump. That's not true. The truth of the matter is Trump used racism to achieve his presidency.
He used populism as well.
No,
he appealed to the masses.
Ratio, not economic, ratio populism, and that sense of entitlement that if you are white, you are automatically rich and you should be privileged. It's the same thing we are seeing with the tribal barons that are being paraded every other day in our screens. All
right.
Being told that we can only form government through this certain kind of people. You see? And with Okoa Kenya, or Okoa, I don't know, one Kenya movement being a parking bay so that they do not join with the others. So that kind of thing, Trump is not an example of the hustler. In fact, the person who exemplifies the hustler narrative is Joe Biden. He is very clear that we are doing bottom up, middle out. Because you want to empower people so that you have many new men and women created so that they go into their cracks and crannies, build new houses for their mothers and fathers, build, make their schools, and also the issue of Harambes. Let me address it very clearly. Our plan in the Hustler Nation, ideology, is to have healthcare being a percentage of your basic pay, so that then you empower hospitals so that you don't have to keep on going for these Harambes.
All right. You see, Isaac Mwaura, when you say Joe Biden is the person who personifies what the hustler narrative is, he is riding on a wave of an America for everyone.
Exactly. An America for everyone because
which is slightly opposite to someone who has the dichotomy of a hustler and a dynasty.
Hustler Nation is not tribal. Remember, we have the dichotomy of Kikuyus versus Luos and what have you, which is now is a factotum. It's actually the fulcrum of the unity that we are seeing within the BBI. That if Kikuyus and Luos come together, then Kenya is safe. No, Hustler Nation, by the way, and I also had this in contribution, is not a preserve. It does not resonate with Mount Kenya region. Go to look at when there was the celebration in Nyanza. I mean, Reuben Kigame has talked about South Nyanza people. The Hustler Nation is across the tribe.
All right.
It doesn't have a tribal inclination. It is everyone. If you look at the people who support the deputy president, I mean, you have people from Taita Taveta, you have people from Northeastern, you have people from Central, you have people from Nyanza. We are all there because we are tired of this tribal, cocoon that is actually being used to divide us, so that we do not address the real problem of our generation. And the real problem of our generation, Abubakar, is economic determinism, is economic colonialism.
We'll come to the economic determinism. Go ahead, Prof.
Abubakar, I think my friend Mwaura is basically using too many words to say of the same thing, that the Hustler Nation is useful to this country. It is not. I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. I mean, the Hustler Nation thesis is the most hypocritical, the most dishonest, and the most abusive ideology ever hatched in this country.
How so, Prof?
Because it is trying to counter ethnicity in Mount Kenya. I mean, to enable Ruto to penetrate Mount Kenya, it is trying to counter ethnicity by shifting the axis of presidential contest from ethnicity to class. And that is to inherit the Jubilee territory. Simple and clear. It is not in the Rift Valley, his homeland. It is not at the coast. It's nowhere. The real target is the Jubilee constituency, which was the Rift Valley and Mount Kenya. And what Ruto is using is Mount Kenya. Therefore, the Hasra nation is basically targeted at dividing the Mount Kenya region.
Not at all.
And this is where poverty is hitting harder. It is hitting harder. This is where we have more borders. Remember, we are talking about of the 13 million people, almost a third of the population, and next to Nairobi. Poverty is more intense in the Mount Kenya region. Therefore, by shifting the axis of politics from ethnicity to class, rather than shifting it to nationalism, basically the Biden ideology of omnibus or a broad American church, then this is where the evilness
Prof,
ideology.
Prof, let me ask you this, Prof.
Yeah.
Prof, you are narrowing it down to a case of Mount Kenya and Central region. Honestly. It's not, is it?
Yes.
Observably, we have seen a wave across the country from politicians and people who are declaring as though they are hustlers and part of this movement.
Well, the point is, there are many people who are boys and girls in this country. That is true. That has nothing to do with either Mwaura or myself, who are elite. It has everything to do with the shift in our economy. We are depending more on information. Safaricom is making more money than the coffee industry and tea industry combined. Not because the tea industry is not producing, but you and I are now using IT as we speak. So even at night, the IT companies are making money. We cannot have a coffee at night. So there is an economic shift which we are trying to deal with. And the faster our elite do it, the better. Instead of stopping us to transit from the current dependency on IT and to ensure that we have value addition of our agriculture.
All right.
Abubakar.
The deputy president is busy hatching divisive ideologies.
All right, Prof. Point made. Prof.
Let me just make a quick point.
You've made your point, Reuben. As you contribute to the discussion, because of the interest of time, let's equally talk of your presidential candidature for the 2022 race. I believe under the Rebuild Kenya Party.
No, let me clarify that. So first of all, I don't completely buy into the narrative of the hustler narrative being a Mount Kenya, thing. But I do agree with Prof on the fact that it is diversionary. It is diversionary because it takes our attention away from the real problem. Prof talked about the three enemies at independence, that is poverty, ignorance, and disease. But we have a fourth enemy that has been added to us that we don't want to address. And that is what the hustler nation does not want to address either. And that is the issue of corruption and impunity. That is our enemy number 4. And the whole issue of imbalance, economic imbalance, the whole issue of areas of this country that are not developed and so on, with the statistics showing that Turkana is the least developed, for example, has nothing to do with an economic model. It has everything to do with the pillaging of our assets, the pillaging of our resources, so that the president himself admits that every single day we lose 2 billion shillings. That admission itself is what we should be addressing. Instead of saying we will look for money to empower the bottom, why can't we stop the hemorrhage? When you have a wound, you first look for an elastoplast. So you stop the bleed, that there is not money to serve the bottom. The problem is that the top has taken all the money from the bottom. And that is why when I stepped out to run, and declared that I'm going to run, I am actually headed towards, cleansing or repairing the top, because that is where the problem is. We need people at the top that can make decisions that will percolate right down to the common man, because that is where the problem is. That is where the theft is. The common man is not stealing. The people at the top are the ones stealing from the nation and putting us into debt, and not just us, but our children. So we have to come to a point where you look at the landscape now, and everybody on the right is huddled on one side, One Kenya Alliance and Jubilee and ODM. Then you have the deputy president somewhere in the middle, but the left is gaping. And so the Wanjiku, the Kaleche and Anyango are basically saying, who is going to stop the hemorrhage for us so that things can trickle down? So that is why I'm running, because we need that narrative. We need an alternative voice that does not concentrate on this polarization and class talk, but says this: can we unite this country and bequeath ourselves and posterity a much honorable and value-based nation? That is what I stand for.
All right, and Reuben, as I conclude with you, so that I give the rest each 30 seconds to make their closing remarks. You are not able to launch that candidature because of police telling you that there was no physical gathering allowed.
Abubakar, I actually launched. It's just that I did not do it where we were supposed to do it. We were supposed to do it at Chester House, and we wake up going to Chester House and we are told we cannot have the launch. So we actually launched from elsewhere. And if you look online, yes, the launch is done. So for sure, I'll be pushing all the way to the ballot, God willing and God preserving us. And I use God because who knows that all of us will make it to next year with COVID, with so many different challenges. I think we all need the humility to say, God willing, inshallah, that we will make it and participate in this particular election.
All right, Isaac Mwaura, as I get your final closing remarks, Prof talked of the criminalization, and partly, and I've had this argument, the many who reach that conclusion do so because they see the hustler nation as a divisive nation between the hustlers and dynasties, talking of a class struggle between the rich and the rest. We're having this discussion, Isaac Mwaura, at a time when we are seeing the horrific images coming from South Africa. What is the fear? What is the confidence, rather, that this is not a class division that will burn this country?
It's not a class division because we've never had one before. It's an economic conversation that we should have. Whatever is happening in South Africa is basically a political problem between ANC members, between Cyril Ramaphosa and Jacob Zuma. That has been ongoing. I was a student there, so I can comment that authoritatively. What we were shifting is because people are so used to the tribal arithmetics of this country, Abubakar, that they find it inconceivable that people who are border riders, people who are tuk-tuk, wheelbarrow owners, that they can actually think that they can grow economically. That is extremely scary to them. But it does not threaten them, because I don't think those people who have managed to amass a lot of wealth in this country have done it at the expense of the poor people. If they have done so, then that is very criminal, and that is what should be criminalized, because that's like stealing from the poor. But we don't want to go that direction, because that's the class war that the people who our competitors are trying to drive us into. What we are simply saying, and if you read the book, Why Nations Fail, it says very clearly, the nations that succeed are the ones that create new men and women. And that one I must emphasize. But the countries that fail are the ones who are dominated by a certain group of people. If you look at the first, second, third, and fourth generation, they are the same kind of people. And I don't think when we conceived a presidency that goes for 2 terms and you cannot run away, you cannot run again, we were conceiving a situation where you have people who would live forever. The longest serving president was President Moi, who did 24 years. I believe after President Uhuru, even President Ruto, if he's elected, there will be another one, maybe even President Mwaura. And I must really congratulate, Abubakar, my brother Reuben Kigame, being the first person with disability, to run for presidency. That is extremely important.
I hope you'll be in my cabinet.
That's extremely important, Reuben.
Fair enough.
And also to say that we, as our generation, our conversation is not really about the constitution.
All right.
Our conversation is about the economy, and we must either push it and we succeed and lift millions of people from poverty like China, or betray it and continue to be downtrodden the way we are.
All right, Prof, less than 30 seconds to make your final remarks.
The Haswan nation ideology is diversionary. It does not point to a clear path to prosperity, either for the poor Buddha people, but it's simply populist. It's confusing in the sense that it is not about the hustle, it's about theft. Those who are talking about hustling are really confusing hustle, my labor with my theft. It's confusing thieves and with hustlers. Hustlers are people who are making genuine wealth, not those who are stealing. And finally, hustler cannot be an ideology because there is no ideology that is based on poverty. That to be poor is an ideology. We need to shift the access to nationalism. We are all Kenyans, we have values, we have integrity, we have morals, and we have a vision of ourselves all together, the poor and the rich. We
don't have values.
Yeah, we have a ship. Yes, we do have. We have chapter 6 of our constitution, which spells how we should be. So we have values. We are not punishing those who are violating values. So in short, the future of Kenyan stability is nationalism. Kenyan nationalism, where we are all the same, equal as citizens.
All right. All right, Professor Peter Kagwanja, Isaac Mwaura, Reuben Kigame, thank you for making time for us tonight on Pundits Night on TV 47. Well, the conversation continues online, and that brings us to the end of the show for tonight. Thanks for watching. Bye for now. Enjoy the rest of our programs tonight of all nights. Good night. God bless.